Hey, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of Indie Game Movement, the podcast that talks about the marketing and business of indie games. I'm Andrew Pappas, going to be your host again today, and this is episode 123, where we're going to be talking about how indie devs can create awareness with Twitter. All right, now, creating awareness for your game and building a community will always be a challenge for indie devs, and there are lots of ways to do this, but one that a lot of devs seem to gravitate to is Twitter. Now, while organic reach on Twitter is really strong, it can be a challenge to develop effective awareness strategies that convert into a community while still working on your game. That's why our guest today is going to share his methods and tips on how you can ramp up your Twitter presence and still be able to focus on development. So that's what we're going to be talking about right here today on Indie Game Movement. All right, hey everyone, and we're back, and today I have Nicholas with us today. Nick, how's it going?
Yes, Nicholas. Nicholas, okay. Yeah.
And thank you so much for being a guest, and I guess I'll just get right to it. You're with Blue Goo Games, and just share a little bit more about yourself and what you're doing with the company and some things that you do in your personal time.
Yeah, we're two people, me and Tobias. We're working on the game for about a year, and we've been doing like a lot of stuff since we started. But about sometimes around September last year, we started doing Twitter and trying to market the game a bit, because the first half part of the year wasn't much to show, just a lot of uninteresting code. So about myself personally, I love photo and filming. I have a family, 2 kids, and having kids and making games is kind of hard sometimes, but in the night I can work, or early in the morning.
Yeah, and I can definitely relate to that with having kids and everything too. So you mentioned about you've been making this game. Oh, and what is the game again?
It's a Space Chef at the Taste of Trouble.
Taste of Trouble. Okay, and what is it about?
Yeah, it's like you're a chef, you're in space, and you have a restaurant, but mysteriously it's destroyed sometime in the beginning of the game. And you have to rebuild it to rebuild your legacy. And you have to travel, explore space, collect resources, farm a little, mine a little, and build stuff in your base. And you basically go to different planets and talk to people and meet aliens. And so it's a combination of something like Stardew Valley in space and a little more focus on action, space action. And it's a lot of humor in it. It's kind of a dirty space western atmosphere.
All right, I really do like that. So, I think this is kind of interesting too, because this is your first game, correct?
Yeah.
Okay. And the reason why I say that too is because, as you opened up with, you mentioned how you've already been doing a pretty decent amount of promotion, a lot of which I believe is through Twitter, correct?
Yeah.
Well, I know it's through Twitter because that's what we're going to be talking about here today. But the point why I'm bringing this up is because I think it's really good that for your first game and how you're leveraging Twitter, and we're obviously going to get into these things too. I think it really says a lot about how you're applying what you're learning from this experience, and I think a lot of other indie devs can probably relate to that quite a bit. So despite you making your first game, I think we're going to get into how you're making some really good strides and learnings in terms of how to really create that awareness. But before we do that, I want to get right into the Q Box round, where we ask a series of random questions. So are you ready?
Sure. Go ahead.
Why do you make games?
I've always been in love with creating things. I've created music, film, and I just feel the urge to create things. So making a game is like the ultimate thing to create, because it takes little bit of music, graphics, and a lot of brain power to make something interesting. So I love that, like the feeling of creating things.
Awesome. Name one country you want to travel to.
Madagascar, because they have lemurs, I think it's called.
Nice. Strawberries or bananas?
Strawberries.
All right. What's one thing that motivates you every day?
It's having a game that I love, and having a job that I love. Creating a game is not my full-time job, but it's a lot of time I spend on it. And this time I'm sure I'm gonna finally release the game, because I've made games before, but nothing that I felt like releasing, so that's very motivating.
Okay, nice. Final Fantasy or Zelda?
Zelda, definitely. I never understood Final Fantasy.
I only laugh because I'm such a hardcore fan of Final Fantasy, but most people probably wouldn't know it if they met me. All right, and then what are you playing right now? If you're playing, because I know between kids and doing everything you're doing, you're probably really busy.
Yeah, I don't play much when I'm on my own, because I usually work on a game, but my son loves Zelda, Link's Awakening.
Oh, nice.
I call it the small Zelda. It's a little easier for the kids, and it's a real cool game, and he loves it.
Awesome. Cool. All right. So thank you for sharing that with us. And now we're going to get right into the main topic here, which is how indie devs can create awareness with Twitter. So we're going to go ahead and kick off this conversation with how important do you think Twitter is for indie devs, and is it a good place to start building a community?
Yeah, I think it's super important, because you get to know other devs, and you have a way to steer your game in the right direction, because when you post stuff, you get feedback. And if no one reacts to what you post, maybe it's not that good. But you need to build some audience first before you can make decisions like that. But if only 5 people comment your post, then you get valuable feedback. So also I think it's very motivating. And I'm quite surprised by the amount of help that you get from other people in anything from marketing to connect you with other people. I found a real amazing programmer just by asking a question on Twitter, just a simple text question, and I got an answer in 5 minutes. And this guy helped me do some amazing things with the game.
Oh, cool. So in general, just as a whole, you're seeing that there's a lot of value from just like posting questions and having the type of answers and stuff. But and you even said like connecting with other devs too, which is definitely, an important thing as well. I know sometimes though it comes up where people will say like, or maybe some even devs might feel that, hey, the only people that are really on there between the hashtags they're using and things like that are just other devs. And, not necessarily prospective fans. Would you say, is that a good thing or a bad thing?
Yeah, I agree with that. It's a lot of devs there, but devs are also gamers. Not everyone is making a game 100% of the time. And if they are, they still have friends that are gamers. So the more people that see your game, even if they're devs, will increase the chance that you get more fans.
Yeah, and so and part of that could be too is if you're connecting with all these other devs and such, that they could very well be, like you said, very outgoing and helping in finding other ways that they can be beneficial to both of you. But also, if they're connecting with you and sharing their stuff, they could also already have a very well established following with fans that might even become fans of yours. Is that another good way to look at it too?
Yeah, I agree. Totally agree.
All right, cool. Well, I was always curious about that because I know that question comes up a bit sometimes. But to kind of dive in a little bit further, let's talk about how, what are some good ways to get started with like strategies and shortfalls. So I guess in particular, what is, a simple and effective way that indie devs can get started on Twitter? Because I'm sure sometimes it can be a little intimidating.
Yeah, I think your profile is really important. You're going to have a picture of yourself or something from your game, so you can get a identity so people recognize you. and you have to have like one or two pieces of content, like a GIF or a video, and you pin it to your tweet so it doesn't get lost in your tweets. Then you start talking with people. Look at like the top tweets or search for like indie devs and comment their stuff. And the most important part, as it's so important to ask questions to the people you comment. Don't just type looks good. Instead, ask a question, and then they will get back to you, and they'll get a conversation going, and they will probably check you out and maybe follow you if you say something interesting.
Okay. And do you have like a recommendation in terms of what type of questions to ask, or is it more in light of how the conversation is going?
Yeah, if you depending on what they post, maybe they post something. They post something that looks like a game, but they don't write that is a game. You can ask which game is this, and also maybe you can. Oh, I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry.
Hey, no worries. So you have some ideas in terms of questions, and you put out some pretty good strategies out there too. But like when you're looking at like other Twitter accounts and things like that, what are some mistakes that you see other indie devs make with their Twitter presence? Well,
I think some devs just do retweets all the time, don't post anything of their own. So when I consider following someone, I usually check their profile, check their picture, and if that's cool, I usually follow. But if not, I might scroll through to find something interesting. And if there's just a lot of retweets, it's hard to find what they're doing. Maybe it's not interesting to follow them. So I recommend that. Make sure to have a pinned tweet. That's very important.
Okay, so a pinned tweet, and like. So pinning a tweet that just sticks at the top of your profile or of your thread and everything. What kind of things do you think would be really good for pinning a tweet there?
Yeah, a video is ideal. Like if you have a trailer or something, if you're that far in your game dev, that's great. But if not, then just like a cool picture and maybe a link if you have something like you want to share your website or have a YouTube channel or something like that. You can post that, but always include a picture or a video or a GIF.
Okay. And that definitely sounds pretty helpful and makes complete sense. All right, so why don't we go? I would like to go and dive in a little bit further here too, because, like, for example, Twitter in itself, in the process of posting and what to post, and it can easily become pretty overwhelming. So, what are some processes that you've developed and that you would recommend to prevent, people from becoming frustrated with using Twitter as a whole?
Well, the thing I find most overwhelming for me as I keep growing my followers, I think the notification system is a bit confusing and gets it gets flooded real quick. And I think it's really important to answer comments to your own content. So if you post something and people reply to it, people give comments, you need to reply to them. And if you just check the notifications, you might miss it. So one thing I think is really good is to check your own profile and click your tweets and check for new comments and reply to them. But one other thing that is really good is to schedule tweets, because the timing is really important. Because I'm in Sweden, and right now it's you're in the US, so it's afternoon, right? Yeah, so I think now is a good time to post things. And I use a tool called Audience that you can see when people most engaging with the tweets. And this is about the time, sometimes late night in Sweden or a late evening, but during the day in the US. So as much people as possible see them. So schedule them if you don't sit by the computer at that time. So you don't just post something when you feel that you made it, but keep it for a schedule and post it later.
Okay. And so you mentioned this tool called Audience. Like, do they mention anything else too in terms of like this particular kind of hashtags to use that would be really helpful, or what time to use those hashtags, or do they get any more like in depth to that as well?
No, not like that, but you can see which hashtags are most popular of my own tweets. But most devs